Frank Delaney's alarm clock hasn't gone off in 4 months. He doesn't need it anymore. His eyes just open every morning, 4:47 am, like clockwork, whether he wants them to or not. And by 7:30 at night, he's fighting to keep them open on the couch, in the middle of a sentence, sometimes in the middle of a bite of dinner. His wife jokes he's turned into a rooster. Frank doesn't think it's funny. Because for 4 months he did everything the podcasts and morning routine videos told him to do. The second his eyes opened, lights on, straight outside, sunglasses off, face toward the sky. 10 minutes, sometimes 15. This resets your clock, they said. This fixes your sleep. So he did it. Religiously every single morning, and every single morning he woke up a little bit earlier than the morning before. If any part of that sounds familiar, staring at the ceiling before the birds are even awake, or losing a fight with your own eyelids by early evening, you're not alone. And today, we're going to fix that. Because here's the question nobody selling you a morning routine ever stops to ask. Is stepping outside the second you wake up actually resetting your body clock? Or, for a body like Frank's, could it be the exact thing pushing that clock earlier and earlier? Stick with me. Because the answer isn't the same for everyone, and by the end of this, you'll know exactly which one you are and the precise window for your body that turns morning light from a mistake into medicine. Let's start with what light actually does, because almost nobody explains this part, and it's the exact mechanism that was working against Frank every single morning without him knowing it. You have a clock, not the one on your nightstand, a real biological one, sitting behind your eyes in a tiny cluster of brain cells about the size of a grain of rice. It runs on its own, ticking away whether you check it or not. And every single day it needs to be corrected, nudged back into sync with the actual 24-hour world outside. The tool it uses to do that correction is light. Think of light as a dial your body turns every morning to reset itself, the exact dial Frank had been turning at the wrong hour for months. But here's the part that changes everything. The direction that dial turns depends entirely on when you turn it. Scientists have actually mapped this out. They call it a phase response curve, which sounds complicated, but really it's just a chart, like a weather map showing exactly when light helps and exactly when it backfires. And what that map shows is almost poetic in how simple it is. Light in the morning hours pushes your clock earlier. Light in the evening pushes your clock later. And light in the middle of the day barely moves the needle at all. Researchers actually call that stretch the dead zone, because your body's mostly ignoring it by then. So if morning light pushes the clock earlier, and Frank was already waking up at 4:47, you can probably see where this is going. But before we get to Frank's mistake, here's the reversibility part. Because I don't want you sitting with a knot in your stomach for the next 15 minutes. Whatever your clock is doing right now, too early, too late, all over the place, it is not broken. It is not permanent. It is at its core just a dial responding to a signal. And once you know how to read that signal correctly, you can turn it exactly where you want it. That's really what the rest of this video is. Okay, so why was Frank's routine backfiring? Here's the part almost no morning light video tells you. Because it isn't as flattering to a one-size-fits-all routine, your clock doesn't stay the same as you age. Starting somewhere around your early 60s, most people's internal clock naturally drifts earlier. Researchers who study this call it a phase-advanced sleep, body temperature. Even the hormone that tells you when to wake up, all quietly shift to an earlier hour than they ran at when you were 40. It's a well-documented pattern in aging research, and it's a huge part of why so many people over 60 find themselves wide awake at 4 or 5 a.m. without ever setting an alarm, and fading fast by early evening. Let that sit for a second, because it's worth repeating on screen as much as it is out loud. Your body clock doesn't stay fixed for life. It moves on its own. Years before Frank ever picked up a bottle of melatonin or watched a video about morning light. Here's why that matters for the sunlight advice you've probably heard. Most popular morning light routines were built with a young, typically delayed clock in mind, someone who stays up too late and struggles to wake up, who genuinely benefits from a hard, early push toward earlier. But if your clock has already drifted early on its own, adding another strong push earlier signal, first thing, every single morning doesn't fix anything. It compounds it. Frank's 4:47 wake-up pushed itself to 4:47 because his aging clock was already advancing. Then his well-meaning morning sunlight routine came along and pushed it earlier still, which meant he woke up a few minutes earlier the next day, which meant his first thing in the morning light exposure also happened a few minutes earlier, which pushed the clock earlier again. It's not a flaw in Frank, it's a feedback loop. And feedback loops, once you can see them, are some of the easiest things in the body to interrupt. So let's break down exactly what the well-meaning advice gets wrong. Because there are 4 specific myths hiding inside. Just go outside in the morning. And once you can spot all 4, you'll understand your own body's light needs better than most doctors bother to explain in a 15-minute appointment. Myth number 1. Earlier is always better. This is the one that got Frank. The truth is, light doesn't have a universally good time or bad time. It only has a time that matches what your particular clock needs that day. For someone who's staying up too late and dragging in the morning, earlier light is the fix. For someone whose clock is already running ahead of schedule, early to bed, wide awake at dawn, more earlier light is like hitting the gas pedal when you're already speeding. Myth number 2. Any light through a window counts the same as being outside. This one surprises almost everyone, including Frank when I walked him through it. Scientists measure brightness in units called lux. Think of it as literally counting how many candles worth of light are landing on your eyes at once. Your average living room, even with the lamps on, sits around 200 to 500 lux. Step outside on a cloudy, gray, overcast morning and you're suddenly getting somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 lux, 10 to 20 times brighter than your living room, even without a hint of sunshine. Direct sun pushes that number into the tens of thousands. Your circadian clock genuinely cannot tell the difference between a well-lit kitchen and total darkness. To your internal clock, they're basically the same thing. Now here's a pattern interrupt, because this next piece surprised even the researchers who study it, and it's the piece that would have saved Frank a lot of confusion. Myth number 3. More light for longer always means a bigger reset. You'd assume doubling your outdoor time would double the benefit. It doesn't. Researchers tracking exactly how much your clock shifts based on how long you're exposed to bright light found the effect climbs pretty steadily for the first couple of hours, and then it flattens out. Levels off. More time outside past that point buys you almost nothing extra. which means you don't need to plant a lawn chair on your porch for the entire morning. It's actually a detail Frank had right by accident. His 10 to 15-minute routine was never too long. It was only ever badly timed. You need far less time than the influencers imply, and for a lot of people over 60, less time is actually the safer answer anyway. Since the lenses in our eyes naturally yellow with age, letting in less of the blue light your clock relies on, and some eye conditions make longer, unshielded sun exposure something worth a quick conversation with your eye doctor first, especially if you've had cataract surgery or you're on a medication that increases light sensitivity. Myth number 4. This is only about sleep. It isn't. And this is where the story gets bigger, and it's exactly the piece Frank had never even considered. That same light signal that sets your clock also helps trigger your body's natural morning cortisol rise, not the stress hormone cortisol you've heard warnings about, but the healthy short morning spike that acts more like your body's own alarm clock, waking up your alertness and your mood along with your eyes. Get that timing right, and people often report clearer thinking and steadier mood by mid-morning, not just better sleep that night. Now here's the study that genuinely surprised the scientists who ran it, and I think it's the single most useful fact in this whole video, and it's the exact fact that explains what was actually happening to Frank every single morning. Researchers directly compared how older and younger adults respond to the exact same light exposure at 8 different times across the day. And what they found wasn't that older bodies respond less to light, they respond about the same amount. What was different was the timing. The exact clock hour when light flips from pushes you later to pushes you earlier happens nearly 2 hours earlier for an older adult than it does for someone in their 20s or 30s. Read that again, because it's the whole video in one sentence. Your personal light switch is wired to flip at a different hour than a 30-year-old's, which means the exact same 6:30 a.m. walk that resets one person's clock perfectly can, for someone whose switch already flipped, be pushing it the wrong direction entirely. Before I give you the exact protocol, let's figure out which one you actually are, because guessing wrong here is exactly what happened to Frank. 3 quick questions. You don't need a notebook, just be honest with yourself. First, when you wake up naturally, with no alarm, what time does your body choose? If it's consistently before 5, that's a signal your clock has already advanced. Second, by early evening, say 7 or 8 o'clock, are you fighting to stay awake even when you don't want to be tired yet? That's the other half of the same pattern. Third, if you force yourself to stay up later, does it actually help you sleep in longer the next morning? For most people with an advanced clock, the answer is no. You still wake up early, just more exhausted. Doctors who study this even have a name for the pattern, an advanced circadian rhythm, and it's one of the most common, least talked about reasons people over 60 assume their sleep is simply broken with age, when really it's just running on the wrong schedule for the light they're feeding it. If you answered yes to those first 2, you're very likely where Frank was. If your wake time sits in a more ordinary range and your evenings feel normal, you're not, and that's just as useful to know, because it means the popular advice was actually built for you all along. So here's what actually works. Here's your exact time. If you fall asleep at a normal hour, wake up somewhere in a normal range, say 6 to 7:30, and you feel reasonably alert through most of the evening, your clock is behaving. For you, the classic advice is correct as written. Get outside within the first hour of waking. Aim for 10 to 20 minutes. Skip the sunglasses if your eyes tolerate it, and just let the sky do its job. But if you're waking up before 5, and you're fighting sleep by 7 or 8 at night, that's Frank. That's the advanced pattern. And for you, the fix runs almost opposite to the popular advice. Hold off on bright light for the first hour or two after you wake. Keep the blinds mostly closed, the lights low. Ease into the morning in dim conditions on purpose. Then, later, ideally somewhere in that 4 to 6 p.m. window, get yourself outside for a stretch of natural light. That's the signal that nudges your clock the other direction. Later, back toward a bedtime and wake time you'd actually choose for yourself. And here's the third tool, the one that actually surprised me the most when I first read into this. You don't need sunshine for any of this to work. Which was a relief to Frank on the mornings the sky didn't cooperate. A flat, gray, overcast morning sky still delivers 10 to 20 times the brightness of your living room. You are not waiting for a sunny day. You're not waiting for anything. The sky itself, cloudy or not, is doing the heavy lifting the second you step outside. One more thing worth saying plainly. If you're on medication, especially anything that affects your eyes, your mood, or your sleep, or if you have a diagnosed eye condition, it's worth a quick conversation with your doctor before making a deliberate change like shifting your light exposure later in the day, which is exactly what Frank did before he changed anything. This isn't about stopping anything you're taking, it's just making sure your plan fits your particular situation. Frank tried it. Not the sunglasses off, sprint into the yard the second his eyes opened, the other version. He kept the bedroom dim for the first hour, made his coffee in low light, and instead of chasing the dawn, he waited until his wife left for her walk around 5 in the afternoon and he joined her. Funny enough, his wife didn't need any of this. Her wake-up time had always hovered around 6:30, comfortable, unremarkable. She was exactly who the original advice was written for. Which is really the whole point. 2 people, same house, same age range, 2 completely different clocks. There was never going to be one single exact time that worked for both of them. There was only ever the time that matched what each of their bodies was already doing. 2 weeks in, his 4:47 had drifted to 5:40. By week 4, it was 6:15. Picture that for a second, not the number itself, but the actual morning. The robe still on from the night before. Coffee steam curling up in Frank's kitchen, still soft and gray, no rush to get outside, no fight against his own eyelids. Just a normal morning, arriving at a normal hour for the first time in months. That's the whole formula, the same one that took Frank from 4:47 to 6:15, and here are the 3 things worth carrying with you. 1. Figure out which pattern you actually are before you follow anyone's routine, including this one. 2. If your clock runs early, the fix isn't more morning light. It's light later in the day. 3. You don't need direct sun, hours outside, or a perfect routine. 10 to 20 minutes of ordinary daylight, time to your body instead of the clock on the wall, is enough. Your body's internal clock is not fighting you. It never was. It's simply responding, exactly as it's designed to whatever signal you hand it. Hand it the right signal at the right hour, and it will recalibrate itself at 60, at 70, at any age at all. That capacity doesn't expire. Frank still isn't exactly a morning person. But he's not a rooster anymore either, and these days when his eyes open, it actually feels like his own morning, not one his body forced on him. But here's what I didn't expect when I started digging into this research, and it's exactly where we're headed next time. The timing of that morning light doesn't just decide when you feel sleepy. Early findings are now linking the timing of your light exposure to how your body handles sugar all day long, your insulin, your energy, your blood sugar readings, quietly shaped by a signal you're sending your body before you've even had breakfast. That connection is bigger and stranger than almost anyone expects. And that's exactly what we're breaking down next. If today helped you understand your own mornings a little better, you know what to do. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.